Hi, this video will discuss ownership of firms and the objective of firms. So what is a firm? A firm organizes and converts inputs, like labor, materials, energy, capital, into outputs, producing goods and services. There are various ownership structures of firms. There are both private and public and non-profit firms. So a for-profit or a private sector firm is owned by individuals or a non-government entity whose objective is to make a profit. For example, McDonald's. There's also a public sector where firms or organizations are owned by governments or government agencies, and the local utilities in our area, Greenville Utilities, is an example of a public sector firm. And finally, there's non-profit or not-for-profit sector. And these organizations are neither owned by the government nor intended to earn a profit. So they're a non-profit company whose objective is something else other than profits. For example, the Red Cross objective is to obtain and distribute blood. So who owns these for-profit firms? Well, you can have a variety of different ownership structures. There can be a sole proprietorship, where a firm is owned and run by a single individual. So the individual who owns the firm is considered a sole proprietor. They bear all the liability in case a firm were to make a mistake. They can potentially be sued, and so they have unlimited liability when you have a sole proprietorship. A general partnership. This is a business that's jointly owned or controlled by two or more people. So attorney practices are commonly general partnerships. 2, 3, or 4 individuals get together and they jointly own that business. Finally, you have corporations, which are owned by shareholders. So the corporation issues shares of stock, and the owners of the shares, or shareholders, own a proportion then of that company. An example of corporations that previously mentioned, McDonald's, also Bank of America. The advantage of having a corporation is there is limited liability by the owner. You own a share of stock. If the company has a liability concern, then the company can go bankrupt, in which case the stock becomes worthless, but they can't come after your individual belongings and assets, unlike the sole proprietorship, where if an individual who owns that business makes a mistake and is liable for damages, then the consumer can sue the individual who owns that business and go after their assets. Sole proprietorships, again, an example here is Jim's Liquid Waste, who handles waste disposal in eastern North Carolina. And Jim's has a service that will just distribute portable toilets. They'll also pump your septic system. Owned by Jim. Jim's business, Jim Liquid Waste, does a good job. Example of a sole proprietorship. General partnership. Here's an attorney office in North Carolina, Greenville. Owens, Nelson, Owens, and Murad. So they are a general partnership owned by these 4 individuals for their attorneys. And finally, corporations. Here's a screenshot from McDonald's homepage. This is an example of a company whose objective is to make a profit, selling you food in terms and hopes of making money on those food sales and profit maximizing the firm.